prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future. We all know that verse. And Jeremiah 1:5 says, before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart. I appointed you as a prophet to the nations. Exodus 9:16 says, but for this purpose I have raised you up, to show you my power, so that my name may be proclaimed in all the earth. And the title of this is, Your Purpose Doesn't Expire. Nicole and I saw a post, or I posted it, and then she reposted it, and I said, oh, I gotta teach on that. So I put a pause to what I was gonna teach this week. The Lord was like, oh no, this is what's needed right now. What is purpose?
The reason God created you.
Right. The reason for which something is done or created, or for which something exists. Purpose declares why we exist. It captures the heart of why you are on this earth and why Jesus died for you. It defines you. Not always in terms of what you think, but what God thinks, and He knows the plans He has for you. Purpose anchors your life in the character and call of God. So if it anchors your life, and if He knew you before you were even a thought in your mother's womb, and if He knows the plans He has for you, and if God fulfills His purpose for you, Psalm 57:2, then you can guarantee that your purpose does not expire. If He knew you and sanctified you, then He put inside of you everything that you are made to be and do for His kingdom. But I've discussed this with a few of you girls, the weight. But sometimes the weight feels so long, and our minds begin to wonder, do I even have purpose? I remember when after my mom passed away, I tried to understand, okay, what's my purpose now? Because I'm trying to figure out who I am without her. I'm trying to figure out, am I moving away from, they say after you lose a loved one or something drastic happens in your life, never do something crazy. And of course I did both times. When I lost dad, I took off and moved to Florida. When I lost mom, I packed up my whole apartment and was like, where am I going, Lord? I was hearing His voice correctly, but I was jumping ahead because I wanted to escape the feeling of the pain, so I took off and ran. But what I did was I tried to pick up her mantle because I knew that was my purpose, but I was doing it ahead of God. So I wasn't actually ready to pick up her mantle. God was showing me that I was going to have her mantle, that I was going to teach where she left off and gather women like this. But I was trying to take it too soon. I wrote a book, and I did start a Bible study anyway. I started online. But when I walked away from it, I actually started grieving her even more, and I lost sight of who I was in God's eyes, and I began to lose hope in myself. And I left everything I knew and started hiding myself, isolating myself as I grieved. I ended up hitting rock bottom in many different ways, and I lost focus of my purpose. But see, if you're not ready to, He'll show you different nuggets, but if you're not fully ready to walk in where He has you, He's like, you can't even touch that yet. You haven't learned, you haven't pruned, you haven't grown, I haven't stretched you, I haven't done all these things that I need to mold you into her. And we try to jump ahead. And that's what I did. And so during that time, I would call to God, asking Him where He was, and putting things on Him, limits on Him, and getting mad at Him, saying, you're not beside me, or anything like that, and do you even see me, like Hagar used to say. So I started developing a life for myself, my way, that I didn't even know if He was even in, because I couldn't understand His plan. So what I did was I had tons of gifts. I was a speaker, I was a singer, I was a leader, I was working in the bottle waitress life, and I was able to be a leader for those girls. And I said, okay, I'm leading those women to Christ. I'm handing out What Would Jesus Do bracelets to all my guests that came in and bought a bottle. They bought an alcohol bottle, they went home with that wrapped around it. I'm doing everything right, God. He's like, but you're doing so many things. at once, even though you're going to be in all those gifts. You're going to be operating in all those in some sort of way. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to take them all and mold them into that one purpose for you. So you go operating every single calling that's meant for you. But instead I was like, oh, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And I was putting so much of my time and energy and draining myself thin in one different thing and another thing and another thing and another thing. And I was doing it on my watch, on my time. And see, we got to be careful of that. Because we will be like, oh no, this is what God gave me. This is what he's doing for me. This is my purpose. But God's like, but your own hands are on it and I'm not in it. Because you're doing it your own way. Like, you know, the story of the Israelites, whenever they were going to go up there and a few of the leaders wanted to go into battle to take the land, the Lord's like, if you go up there, I'm not in it. Even though you can mistake it and be like, oh my gosh, this is so exciting. I'm finally in my purpose. But really, are you? Because you're not operating on his time. You're trying to go ahead of him. That's a key point to write down. We don't want to go ahead of God. Because there's a reason why we have steps and ladders. I'll explain that in a second. But then God met me right where I was. And he started showing me a glimpse of me. How he saw me. And he took me back into a step-by-step plan into my purpose. And that plan was relocating again and waiting on him till he gives me the next step. And waiting can seem like the hardest thing. I mean, I think we've all been in that position. It's the hardest and most crucial thing that you have to go through because he's teaching you in that waiting. And like we talked about last week, hearing his voice, that's where you hear it, in that waiting. And he did the same with Jeremiah and Moses. See, God knows what mistakes you're going to make. He knows when you're going to walk away from him, and he even knows when you're going to come back to him. You're so beautiful. He's just glimpsing over there. And yet he still chooses you. Before Moses was even a thought, God chose him. He knew he would kill the Egyptian. You guys know the story of Moses? He knew he'd kill the Egyptian, and he saw him because he saw him beating up his people in Hebrew. And still God called him later to come back to the same place he ran away from to lead his people out of bondage. Woo! I'm telling you what, I'll tell you right now. I do not want to go back to where God freed me from and took me out of all the stuff I was going through to go back to teach his people. But he's done it with me. And when I had to go back and face those same people, and this, I'm talking about my hometown, and I had to do a worship event, and I was called to not worship like all of them did. I was called to speak prophetically as I was singing and let the Lord speak out of my mouth what he wanted. And he kept saying, get my people ready. And I had to speak out those things as I was singing. It was mostly that with the keyword prophetic. And nobody really welcomed that because they weren't used to that. And I got calls later saying, oh, we want to hear that. That's something we were interested in. But at the time, they were afraid. And just like when Moses had to go back for the people, they were afraid, right? And he had to go back to the place where he was like, oh no, they know me by me killing them. And I ran away. You know, my hometown knows me by the things I used to be. Nay-naying out the bar, getting drunk, you know what I mean? Doing all these things, fighting everybody. Like, they know me by all that. But see, they don't know the new me. And I think that was the same with Moses. Like, he was coming back as the new him, the brand new man for Christ. So in Exodus, and then to fulfill the promise of God in his purpose. In Exodus, after Moses fled, he saw the burning bush, and God revealed himself to Moses and spoke to him, saying that God has seen the misery of his people in Egypt, and he has heard from them, crying out, and he told Moses that he is sending him. And Moses' response is what? Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the Israelites out? And God said, I will be with you. Like, for my purpose, doing different singing things, for my purpose, doing different singing things. Oh, can you mute, my love? Thank you, my love. For my purpose, doing different things on stages. I was terrified of the stage all growing up. Like, I was shaking in my knees when my mom said, the church wants you to sing a song. It was like 7 o'clock, or I was like 7 o'clock. I was like 7 years old. And I get up, they tell me, sing this song. And I'm like, no, I don't want to. Mom's like, I'll buy you something if you sing the song. I'm like, no, I don't want to. It took 3 church tries, 3 Sundays for me to sing this song. Because we're always afraid to walk in our purpose. We're always terrified. God will show it to us and he'll be like, I'm sending you, go. He'll be like, I don't got the equipment. Hold on, I don't got the right shoes on. My hair's not done. Like, I don't got anything taken care of. And he's just like, when God says you're ready and he sees you ready, you will never feel completely ready. You will never feel like, oh my gosh, I am completely ready. Because it's bigger than you. Your purpose is bigger than you can even imagine. That's why it is your purpose. And as I was running like Jonah was, because I was afraid of it, and I was afraid of the crowd. What would the crowd say about me? So when I first started these events, honestly, I would cry on the way there, okay? Then I would take my time outside and cry outside. Then I would pray with the Lord outside and start crying then. And then right before I'm about to walk on, like if I'm speaking, I had all my stuff ready, and this overwhelming, tingling, warm, scary sensation comes over me. And I'm like, okay, I can't tell Lord if this is the Holy Spirit or if I'm about to like walk out the door. But then the Lord, just like he says, Jeremiah, is I will put my hand on you and I will speak for you. There's no fear in your purpose. The only reason you are afraid leading up to it is because it is so big. So as like I was saying, I can't do this. I was telling him, I can't do this. God, choose someone else. How many times do we feel like we get to that point with God? But if he says, if it wasn't too big for you, then you wouldn't need me. I'm going to say that again. If he says, if it wasn't too big for you, you wouldn't need me. Of course it is too big for you because he's in it. He says, I designed it so that you need me every step of that way, and you will know my voice to guide you in it. That moment before I would hit the stage, he would remind me, like I told you guys a second ago, that he would put his hand on me like Jeremiah. That's just my personal thing with him. You may have something else that he says to you when you're about to walk in, but he always says, I'm going to put my hand on your mouth. I'm like, okay. And this, dear, is your purpose. Purpose is the destination, and how to get there is through your calling, your gifts, your talents, your spiritual gifts. A lot of things Lola does. She sings everywhere. She goes to California. She sings. Her husband go all over and sing for people and do events like this and record music. I met her in Nashville when we were recording a song with a group, and you know, she still steps out in it. Despite adversaries, despite things coming her way, she still is walking in it. As many times people have said no to her, as many times that people have said, we're not going to release things to you, like she still kept moving, and God honors that. And I want you to know that God sees that, rewards that, and honor that, and your time is coming. So why do we question our purpose? Because most of the times what we see is so far ahead of us that we lose hope. What we see becomes a loss of faith in our lives. We see from the negative aspects of our future rather than through the eyes of Jesus resting in him. And then we start to worry. Will I ever see it? Have you guys ever heard that worship song, Yet? By, I can't remember. She says that in there. She's like, will I ever see it? And she's crying.
Don't give up on me yet.
Yeah, and she's crying in it, in the music video, before she starts. Oh my gosh, you should sing it. Oh, sing it after this. Will you sing it for us?
We'll close it out.
But she's crying in the music video, and that's like she's feeling. I just see it on her, feeling the touch of the Holy Spirit in that moment, and really asking God. That's probably what's her thing. Will I ever see who I am in you? Will I ever be the daughter, of this? Will I ever be a leader in this? Will I ever reach my full potential? But see, that's what the enemy wants you to say. That's what he wants you to consistently think in your head so that fear comes in. And see, we start to envision that maybe it will never happen the way God promised. And the enemy wants you to see that vision because it leaves you faithless to what God's true plan is intended for you. God operates in our faith, and the enemy also knows that. We see the story of the Israelites. When things are going great, they trusted God. But the moment God goes quiet, so he can teach you, he doesn't send more than what you want, they wanted to expect just for the manna, they went back to what was familiar to them. And as we start walking in our purpose, we realize it's not happening quick enough. So I'm going to go back to what's familiar. When I left Florida, I said, I'm going to go back to Florida again. I kept telling everybody, I'm going back to Florida. I'm packing up all my stuff. I'm going back to Florida. Because I just wanted to jump on what was familiar to me and who was familiar to me. But those weren't the same people that can walk in where I'm going out. It's forward and another self. And I do have a study on that. We will tackle that another day. So they begin to see things through the eyes of who they used to be, rather than the eyes of the one who delivered them from it. They were promised from the beginning when God called Moses to it from the burning bush, but they didn't understand that. See, that's what's so cool, is they're God's chosen people too, and so, but they could never see that. They could never see that as soon as God called Moses to it, they were also called to it. They questioned God more times than they could count, and God gave them chance after chance. And catch this part, your purpose has other people attached to it. There are people who you will come across as you are operating in your purpose who will never know God until you show up. I'll say that again so you can write down. Your purpose has other people attached to it. There are people who will come across you as you're operating in your purpose who will never know God until you show up. So let's not delay their walk with God by delaying our own purpose out of fear. See, there is no way your purpose will expire because it's already inside of you. But you need to live for Him in order to do it. God will show you who you are and what you're going to do for Him, just like He did Moses. But you'll still have to go through every step as He did with Moses. You can't skip the process. Put that down. You cannot skip the process. See, God said, I knew you before your thought in your mother's womb for a reason. Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I sanctified you, and I ordained you a prophet to the nations. He was telling Jeremiah this in chapter 1, before he even sent him out to do the work of the Lord. Before he was to walk in his purpose, He called him. And God has called you too. Some of you even know what it's like. Some of you even know what it is, but it seems so far away. How many of you have been shown a glimpse of what your purpose is? And it seems like it's like way over there. You're like, will I ever touch it? Will I ever reach it? Well, I'm a walking testimony to tell you that you will. Because I have seen myself, my purpose way over there, while I'm in an abusive relationship, while I'm sleeping in my car, while I'm going through all these adversaries, and I said, why would I even touch that woman? How will I even get to know her? Because this is the woman I am in the now. In Jeremiah 1:7-8, the Lord said, do not say, I am too young. You must go to everyone I send you to and say whatever I command you. Do not be afraid, for I am with you and will rescue you, declares the Lord. That's Jeremiah 1:7-8. Give you time to write it down. See, today I appoint you over nations and kingdoms to uproot. Catch this. See, today I appoint you. I'm speaking this over you. See, today I appoint you over nations and kingdoms to uproot and tear down, to destroy and overthrow, to build and to plant. The same thing he told Jeremiah, you can operate in the same thing. Just because you're reading this in the Bible does not mean he does not stand on the same word as today. He is the same God yesterday, today, and forevermore. So everything he told them beforehand is the same thing that's on your life. That's why we read this word. That's why we study this word. So that this can be put on our life in the now. Here's a few examples of people. Sarah was childless and lived her whole life until her old age. She gave birth to her purpose. She gave birth to a son that was the promise of God. And in Genesis 17:16, God promised Abraham that she would be a mother of nations. Her purpose didn't expire. David, a young small shepherd boy, was called to lead an entire nation. Yet he had to endure so much before that. Leaving his family, defeating the giant, to having to go through the chase of Saul, David's purpose didn't expire. He reached the palace. When the whole earth was wicked, only one family still worshiped God, and it was the family of Noah. God found favor in him, and Noah was 600 years old when the flood waters came on the earth. His purpose didn't expire. God chose Moses before he was born as a child, when his mother put him in a basket. Moses ended up being raised by Pharaoh's daughter, and after Moses had to flee from Pharaoh, God called him back to that very place he ran away from. At his older age, he began walking in his purpose with God. Even though it was planned out before he was born, his purpose did not expire. Esther's purpose to rescue her people did not expire. Mary was chosen by God to be the mother of our Savior, Jesus Christ. Her purpose didn't expire. Priscilla, someone we don't really read about in Acts 18, purpose was that God used her to build other people up in the faith and spread the gospel. Her purpose didn't expire. And as a follower of Jesus and his chosen daughters, our purpose does not expire. We live every day to walk in our purpose, whether it's raising your kids to grow up and change the world, or use your gifts to bring others to know Jesus. Whatever your purpose is, God has hand-selected you for it. He has chosen you out of many to change nations, and some people will never answer that call. That's why I feel like one of my purpose is to really push women to answer the call. Because I never want us to get in front of the Lord and him say, I could have used you and did way more for you, but you didn't answer the call. You are not too old. You are not too young. Maybe you're in the waiting. Maybe you're in the hidden season. Maybe you don't even know anything yet. Maybe God is preparing you for it and you don't understand it yet. But even if you feel weary and doing good, keep waiting on the Lord and he will renew your strength. Because he has a plan that is far more than you can even imagine. Because his ways are higher than our ways. His thoughts are higher than our thoughts. And he knows what he is doing, and he knows every single hair on your head. Hello. And he knows every single hair on your head, so therefore he has not forgotten you. When Naomi lost her husband, she could have lost her faith and turned her back from God. When Job lost everything, he could have denied and turned from God like his wife suggested. But they stayed true to God during the hardship, during the pain, during the pursuing, during the preparation, during the stretching, and removal of everything and everyone they loved. Sometimes they had to be just alone with their Heavenly Father. They kept their eyes fixed on Jesus and reaped what was theirs. Being alone with your Lord is not always popular, and it doesn't feel good until you reach a place with him where he's all that you need. And that's when you start walking in it. Maybe they had many assignments that we honestly don't read about, but the ones we didn't know about, but the ones that God wrote in his word are the ones that changed nations, that never expired. Imagine what Ruth must have felt after the death of her husband, and nothing more has come, but she became the family line to Jesus. Her purpose didn't expire. What did all of them have in common? They were all hand-selected and appointed by God. And so are you. Their purpose never expired. In fact, it was always right on time. So I'm going to close with this. This is not just a season. You were planned already. You are not a mistake. You were made for such a time as this. You are in this circle of women for a purpose. God is ready to use you, and this whole time, you haven't felt him near or didn't understand who you are in him is changing daily. And I know I've heard stories from a few of you that said, since I've tapped into Bible study, and since I started reading more, and since I started having a closer relationship with my Father, things are changing in my life. And just always pray for that peace and discernment that comes with it, and that God will shield it with his peace after he removes people, removes you from places, removes you from things, and it's all to set you up for your purpose. But God will restore you. He will repay everything that the enemy has stolen. I got on my live the other day talking about, I just realized my camera was stolen. I just realized my recording mic is stolen. It's like I told the Lord to help me forget things, but then when I realized I need to go find my camera so I could do this and find my recording mic, because I was wanting to record just a song or melody on my laptop. I was like, oh my gosh, I don't have that. I don't even have the screen that comes in front of it. But God gave me a peace, and I'm like, I'm going to share this on my Instagram anyway. But I know God's going to give me a better camera, and I know he's going to give me a better mic, and he's going to give me the things that I need for the time I'm in now. Because honestly, those things I had then was to help me with that season he had me in then. And God is saying, there's so much I want to show you, daughter. God is saying, I have more plans for you than just getting started. I wrote this before I came here, this part, because I heard the Lord say in the moment when I was praying for you guys, he said, when things seem the hardest, don't give up, because he hasn't given up on you. And like I told you guys in that prayer time at the beginning, I cried making this Bible study for you ladies, because I felt your sorrows at nights, I felt your pains at nights, I felt when you laid your head down at night, time to rest, I felt that was where you were the most vulnerable with your Heavenly Father, and you're crying out to him. And at times you get up and wonder why you're even getting up again. And you ask God, who am I? And will I ever reach who I'm called to be? What is my purpose? I want to be the one, in my purpose, I want to be the one where people call to share what God has done for them. Or because of my purpose, I help them see God again. I never want to be the one who pulled them away from God. So your purpose is to seek him first. And as you do the will of your Father, just like Jeremiah, Noah, Moses, Noemi, Sarah, Ruth, Jonah, all these people that we talked about tonight, don't lose hope, because your purpose does not expire.